in audio. You can't really see. It doesn't have any match, but I am curious. So you were at, so when you went to boarding school every year, and did, because you always
9 months out of the year I was in a boarding school.
Yeah.
3 months out of the year I was home. It was a routine every year. The week before we leave for school, my mother would be in tears all the time. I was just kidding. I felt the same way. I don't want to go, but there was no school,
and Stuart was the same.
But Stuart had me. I softened the blow for him, but I had my first year. I was off by myself, and that was a. It's typical of missionary kids and their college that they felt abandoned. Their parents were so involved in winning souls, saving people, that they didn't take care of their own children. And I resented that. And I expressed my resentment by not following along. And the ultimate insult for my parents was I said I'm going to at Elmhurst College, which is a very, very liberal Christian college, very liberal.
And yet, but going to Elmhurst, you would be living at home.
I'm living at home.
So it's kind of like a double rebellion in that, like, I'm going to go to progressive school, plus, now I'm going to live at home and be with you guys.
Yeah.
But at the time, were you aware of that? What that was all about?
Oh yeah, no. Oh, I knew what I was doing, and I think going to Princeton Seminary was the liberal seminary. But my perspective was, I mean, I still don't know what I don't know I don't know. Am I a Christian or am I not a Christian? I don't know. And it didn't really bother me much. But I figured that I'd met somebody from Princeton Seminary. I applied to Harvard, I applied to Yale, applied to Princeton. I was accepted at all of them.
You were accepted to Harvard Seminary? Was it seminary? Harvard?
Divinity School.
Oh, Divinity School.
Yeah, Divinity School. And Yale Divinity School. When I told my dad that, he said, "You will? I can't go. It's not a Christian place." And but then I knew that would be the response, and I was prepared to cut bait with my parents at that point. I knew they wouldn't. I thought that a move to do that would completely set them back.
Did you even want to go to seminary?
I had no intention of being a religion being my profession. No, I needed to work it out for myself. I've been taught all this stuff about the Bible being accurate to the least, in the most detail. I've been fed all this hyper evangelical Billy Graham stuff. In fact, I went to Wheaton College in summer school with Billy Graham's daughter. I knew her, and I was kind of interested to see where she was in the whole thing, whether she was, what did she thought of her dad, and she wouldn't bite.
Was she just towing the company line, more or less?
Sort of, like I was. Yeah. But I was, it was not towing the company line because Wheaton College was on the cusp. Liberal, but not liberal. But I was fed up with Wheaton. It was too liberal, too conservative for me. And I didn't have any, my parents couldn't, couldn't expect my parents to fund my college. So I decided that I would go to Elmhurst. I went on its campus and I liked it. And I realized that it had a very big reputation in American education. And it was one of these gem schools that people overlooked. But academically, it was Princeton level. And so I went, but I was attracted because I wanted to play football. So I tried out for football. I've never seen a football game. I tried out, and then when I went on, showed up. They said, "Have you played football?" No. What position do you want to play? I said, "I want to be quarterback." He said, "Have you ever played quarterback?" No. And I think that they kind of like the chutzpah. But I was lanky, so I was physically, the right position for me would have been a tight end, because I could catch and run and stuff. So in practice I played tight end, and was successful. I caught some stuff. And in one game, our backup quarterback got hurt. And I had my eye on that all along. So I would, before practice would begin every day, I would throw the ball and then into a net. I'd just be off by myself throwing the ball. And they noticed that. And so they put me into a game in which it was a preseason game with a local college, and we were behind, and the first string quarterback, there was only two quarterbacks, so I was the backup. Got hurt, and so they put me in, and I played for the last quarter, and we were one touchdown behind, and I called my own plays. Well, the coach would call them. But he said, if you have a better idea, go with it. So I went with it. I decided that we were having success with our fullback, and I put him on the outside, and we were touchdown behind, and I threw the ball to him, and he scored. And it was, just luck. Anyway, that raised my ranking. So we developed a coach who had this idea of two platoons, two full platoons. Your first platoon and the second platoon, and you would trade them off. And I was the quarterback of the second platoon. Mm-hmm. So we went in, and we won the game. And it was because of everybody. Mm-hmm. So that taught me a lot of things. It taught me one thing, that if you haven't done it, don't be afraid to try. Mm-hmm. And don't be afraid to take risks. And because they can go wrong, they can go bad, and then you've got to deal with it. And so basically by nature rebellious, slightly rebellious, living in a world where everybody was trying to set you along the straight and narrow path.
Yeah.
And I went to the Moody Bible Institute, which your dad was teaching. I told you this. And
that was because that was just an automatic. You were just falling in line, right?
Yeah, I didn't.
You didn't know what to do.
I just come from India. I didn't know that you had to plan all these things, and so it was kind of. My attitude was, it's a kind of a year for me to think about things and take stock. You know, it's not a big change. But anyway.
At Moody, were you living on campus or living on?
Oh yeah, campus.
Okay. And your dad was like a big shot there?
Big shot.
So that must have been, I would imagine that was in some ways awful.
No, it had its pros and cons.
Well, I know the pros would be like, oh, maybe you had some doors open for you, but being someone that was like a little resentful over the way you were treated as a child and being resistant to like the conservative straight and narrow path that was being posed, and then you're there, and everyone thinks he's a big shot.
All that, and I deliberately, you signed a pledge that you wouldn't do this. No alcohol, no dating, no going to movies or anything like that. I had some friends there that were in the same mood as I was.
No dating?
No unchaperoned dating.
Who would chaperone?
Somebody. It's just too awkward. It's just too. I thought it was none of their damn business.
Right.
And so my first, so we would on the sly date. There were others like me there.
What would that mean?
We went out to the mall together.
Right.
With a couple of us in a group. Instead of thinking that, if one of us was wrong, then we were all wrong, and we would all sort of have each other back.
Was there any like hand holding or kissing or anything that took place?
Oh, hand holding. Oh, of course we would. When nobody was watching. Yeah, hold hand. And I don't think I kissed a girl for a long time. I think a girl kissed me before I kissed her. Because I was really, I was shy. Yeah. But uncomfortable with it. But anyway, I broke the cardinal. I did the cardinal sin. I went to see My Fair Lady, and somebody saw me.
Too funny.
What?
That is just outrageous. That is considered
sinful.
I thought. To see My Fair Lady, that's sinful.
It was a movie. Yeah. They were kissing on it, hugging.
Yeah.
And somebody saw me leaving and told the dean. And the dean called me, and Dean was a good friend of my dad.
And he said, "Did you see My Fair Lady?"
No, he said, he called me in and he sat down, closed the door, sat down, and he said, "I don't have a report. I want to discuss it. I had a report that you received leaving a movie cinema where we were playing My Fair Lady. Is that true?" I said, "Yes."
Did you say it? Were you scared? Probably were.
I know what it was. I knew what the thing was.
No, but were you nervous
Oh,
when
of
you had to
course.
admit to him?
Of course. Called in by the dean?
You said yes. Okay.
Oh, of course. Yeah. You know, my only concern was I didn't want to hurt my dad. I didn't care a fig about that. I did not want to be embarrassment to my father. But basically, my punishment is I was asked to leave movie, and I was so relieved. I couldn't wait to go back to my.
But you must have been when you found. There must have been a little period where you felt trauma, like very frightened, and were you immediately happy, or did you think, oh no, what am I going to do? This is awful. I'm being kicked out.
All that. I was a little of all that. I didn't want to hurt my dad. I couldn't deal anymore with this bullshit.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really
right. They cut you loose.
And they cut me loose, and I was happy to be loose. And I went into my dad's office. I said, Dad, and he said, I know why you're here. And I said, I'm sorry. Because the demon told him that I said, I'm sorry. And they said, that's okay. You have to make your own decisions.
You were how old?
Oh, freshman year in high school.
So you were 18-year-old.
7, 8, yeah, I was younger.
Right.
I was because of it being in the British system.
Yeah.
I was 17 when I graduated.
Yeah.
And I was 17 the year of my final year. My birthday was in September.
Right.
But that didn't matter. But anyway, I said, Dad, I'm really sorry. I said, but I just can't. I can't stay here. Now, I was relieved. He said, that's fine. He gave me a big hug. He said, don't go worry about it.
So then immediately you started looking for your next move, and it was Elmhurst.
Well, Elmhurst had its reputation for being like an Ivy League school in quality. And I wanted to go to an Ivy League school.
Why?
Because it was Ivy League. And it was an elite school, and I thought I needed to be in that kind of environment. Added to that.
But you had no idea what you were going to study. Did you?
No.
Right.
No, I was at the stage of life. The next thing is you graduate from high school, you go to college.
Yeah.
And I had a friend who was my age who applied to Yale and was accepted. And I applied to Yale and was put on the waiting list. And that was humiliating in a way. And so I applied to, I went right down to Elmhurst and applied there. I didn't want to go to Wheaton College. That was the reputation to be very, very conservative, very good academically, but very conservative. And I thought, if I'm thrown out of Moody Bible Institute, I'm going to be thrown out of Wheaton too. Because I'm just not going to tell the line. So I went to Elmhurst. And I always sort of wanted to try out for football. So I tried out for football. And you know the story. I made the team. Really developed some real attachment to certain professors who I thought took an interest in me.
Did you know, how did you decide what field of study you wanted to pursue? Was it just kind of like
process of elimination, not business, not medicine.
Yeah.
And it had it had the head of the philosophy department was a German immigrant, Dr. Rudolf Schade, who had graduated from Yale and gone to the divinity school there. So and he got ordained, but he never went into pastor.
Yeah.
And I sort of gravitated to him. I would go to chapel every day. There was chapel. It was a religious school, so there was chapel in the mornings, and I would go there. And I usually, we're going to develop the habit of leaving chapel together and talking, because I developed a bond with him. We talked about my future plans, and I told them that I had no possible interest in being a pastor or going into. I said I need to sort things out. I need to know, for myself, where I stand intellectually. And I said, I'm thinking of going to Princeton. And he said, good choice. I have a friend going to Yale. I didn't want to go to Yale because it looked like I'm following him.
Right.
That's far too independent for that. And since there was always a kind of rivalry between us anyway, I thought that, that was the perfect next step in a rivalry. Go to a rival school. It was,
Did you ever reach a point where you felt, okay, now I know what I want to be. I want to be a teacher and a writer. I want to be a professor and I want to write books, right? Or was there anything like that you were like, I know which path to go?
No, what I did is I realized that I needed more education. I needed more time.
Why? Just
to think. So I went
figure it out.
Yeah, and I went to Princeton, and I said, at the end, I said, I'm no further along than I was when I started.
Right.
I need to go to, and I always wanted to go to Oxford. So I applied to Oxford. Out of the blue. I was accepted.
But this is after you and Mom were together, right?
Mom and I were dating. We got married, and she went to Oxford with me.
When you were first dating, what did you think? Because you were at that point what did you think you might end up doing with your life? That's like going to Oxford, or was it just too open-ended?
I wanted to be a scholar, but I also wanted to be in the State Department. I thought that would give me leverage as a diplomat to be a scholar.
You wanted to be a diplomat or a scholar or both?
Both.
What did those mean to you at the time?
Scholar, books. I loved books. I wanted to write books. And a diplomat, I wanted to go to India, and I wanted to represent the United States. I wanted a hand, a seat at the table, deciding foreign policy. I had big dreams.
But you met there. Where did the kernel of the idea first start? Of like, service in the State Department, facilitating relationship between my new home and my old home, and like, when did somebody plant that seed, or where did you first? How did you get from I'm a preacher man's son who's a big shot, and that's not for me, but I'm underneath the shadow of all of that, to I'm going to Princeton Seminary, and now I'm going to go to Oxford, and I'm going to be a scholar and a diplomat. It's like,
these things, these thoughts are all independently swirling around in your head, and you just put the pieces of the puzzle together.
mm-hmm.
I wasn't. It was. I wanted to. I wanted people to know who I was. There's a lot of vanity in it. A lot of vanity.
Was your dad vain? Did he have vanity?
No, he had this demeanor of real humility, and I think that was genuine. I don't think his parents were middle class Scots. They were not big people, and he wasn't pretentious. And when he wrote, in writing a book was probably his most vain. He wrote a book, What the Cults Believe. It's in there on the.
I know, I have it. Yeah.
Yeah, and he wanted to, he felt that the Lord was leading him. That's how he always put it. Lord is leading him to this. So he wrote that book to instruct the Christians to win souls for Christ in these religions. So you got to know about the religion.
It's a very comforting way to go through life, thinking that whatever comes to mind, it's God put it there. It's a very comforting way. It kind of lets you off the hook. You can do whatever you want. Oh, God.
There's that aspect. Yeah.
I don't have to question anything. Mm-hmm. God is telling you to do this.
The other thing, the other option, the other side of that is the devil made me do it.
Right.
I would pull that a couple of times.
Right.
I don't and not getting in trouble. The devil made me do it.
Yeah.
And people would understand that, but they would. My friends in our community kind of got my temperature. They kind of, it's a lot of, well, what do you expect? It's Bruce. Kind of thing. I was always getting little scrapes, knowing full well, but refusing to be programmed. It played out well on the football field. I was a good backup quarterback. I got us out of a lot of scrapes, and that was kind of a big issue for me. So,
Kids here?
I don't know. I heard something, but I don't see anything. And it's seeing that it matters. Yeah. In my life, it's just like a lot of people's missionary kids. They don't fit in anywhere, so they create a place, a space for themselves. And
do you feel
in a way, we all do that.
Do you feel like you and Uncle Stuart, and I guess Uncle Doug to a lesser degree, Uncle Gordon still as well, were in some ways screwed up by, well, Gordon and Doug didn't grow up they grew up here, but you and Stuart were, when you reflect back on the way your childhood was, do you feel, not screwed up isn't the right word, but do you feel like that you had to overcome certain things?
No, my attitude is always, I've been privileged.
Right.
I'm privileged, and how do I deal with people that are not privileged, like I am? There was a kind of tendency to if it got any further, it would be arrogant. We would call it arrogant.
Right.
And I was, he thought I was a hot shot, and I thought he was a loser.
Yeah.
I had,
Right, and your mom.
I thought that he, I won't tell you what I really thought.
Well, I think I can infer what you thought.
I thought he was.
Thought he was like a kind of adult, maybe, and a overbearing, you know.
I thought I didn't.
An anti-intellectual.
Yeah, but I thought he was hurting your mom.
Right. Well, he was keeping her on a leash, right?
And she wanted to get off of it.
Right.
Of it.
Right.
And that was part of my appeal.
Well, he was very much, like when I think of him, I think of almost a platonic version of the post-World War II American mentality. Like, of, we won the war, we're carrying the sword, we should pat ourselves on the back, and American ingenuity, and we're just, you know, America.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And all of sort of like the pride and the almost kind of like hubris that
There was
post-war
that.
American
He was
mentality
a spoiled
represented.
brat. You know, he was just a spoiled brat.
Right, he was a single child.
Yeah, he was just a spoiled brat, and I took his daughter away from him.
Right. And you weren't paying proper respect to him. You were just some like you know.
Hot shot from Princeton.
Like, do you think that you could have been more deferent, just out of respect for the person's, you know, for Pat's father, just, you know, like when like the way that Evan is, I would say, like just, you know, it shows deference.
There's much more in common between Evan and me than between me and your mom's dad.
Yeah.
He was not college educated. He didn't have the refinements of that. He thought he was hot shot.
Yeah, but he's still like, he's an older male. He's the father of the woman you're courting.
I don't know. You know, I mean, of course I could have done things a lot differently, but I was you know, finding my way too. You know, my view of him bordered on contempt. I thought he was being abusive. He was an abusive father. And I couldn't.
How so? In what way?
I just vibes.
Right.
You know, I never.
Controlling.
Very controlling. I thought that and much of my attitude towards him was in defense of your mom.
And was she too deferent to him, in your opinion? She was just daddy's little girl, a little too much.
I felt that she agreed with me, and that she had never thought of it that way until, and I never, you know, I thought that, you know, I was, you know, basically, I replaced him. And certainly in his mind, I don't think she felt that way. She always loved her dad. Was always very protective of him. I felt that she thought that he was really tough on her mom, and she wasn't going to let any man do the same thing to her. Her mom was really sweet and kind and very loving to me, and he was a little abrupt and sort of childish, and I sensed what was going on, and
He seems kind of like a Trump voter.
Yeah, he was
A MAGA.
a conservative.
He would have a MAGA hat on.
Oh yeah, that was definitely it. But my attitude was, I'm going to find his weak spot and take advantage of it. I kind of had contempt for him because of the way he treated his wife.
And he was, you were butting heads, two males butting heads.
Oh yeah, and I was muscling in on his turf. It's like the in the wilds.
Right.
You know, the young buck
Right.
taking over the herd.
Right. And you were also probably like an elitist. You thought.
Very elitist.
Yeah.
Very elitist. Now I wasn't doing a little boring of the womb.
Right.
You know, for example, when I first detected this, when I was first starting to date, I would come home from a date and we'd stand at the door and talk for a few minutes. And right next to the front door was the window to her parents' bedroom. And I would see him up there, right up against the window, listening to us. And I thought, what a creep.
Right.
He was eavesdropping.
Right.
And trying to get me out of, visibly, I don't know what he's thinking.
Right.
But I felt she was abused, but I didn't have any evidence. I never saw anything, but anyway.
I know what you mean though, but abuse can come in many forms. It doesn't have to be overt. It can just be like an over-controlling kind of.
Because her mother was so timid.
Yeah.
Hank's mother was just timid.
Dora?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I liked Dora. She was a lovely person.
Yeah.
But I could see
He was definitely he enjoyed being in control of that. That's a normal.
You met him, didn't you?
My pop?
Yeah.
Of course, yeah, I grew up with him, and I know exactly everything you're saying.
No.
I do. Of course, I had a relationship with him, and he was gentle with me.
Oh yeah.
But he was also like, especially as I started to become an adult, would begin to see his, like, for lack of any better description, his Trumpist instincts. I started to see it, and I found it to be off-putting for sure. But what about? Have you ever had to swallow your pride, like? Because facing someone like that, sometimes the only way to
I backed off all the time.
be peace is like you have to just swallow your pride.
No, I would never. I would just back off.
And you just avoided.
I just backed off.
And you didn't really see me. You just didn't converse.
We had very little conversation. No, and when it was about weather and stuff like